Welcome to the Journey to Prosperity for All. I'm your host, 𝐘𝐄𝐀. Now, on this program, we will examine the works of government over its first 2 years in office. And today we have with us a very special guest in studio, Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Ms. Susan Rodrigues. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Minister, before we get into what the ministry has been doing for the past 2 years, how would you assess the work the ministry has done for its first 2 years in office?
Well, in order to assess the work, we have to look at what we found when we got there, the work that has been done, and the impact that it has made on our people. So when we took over the Ministry of Housing and Water, there was certainly a neglect in both sectors, housing and water. We would have ventilated already what we found in the housing sector, which was the lack of house lots, no clear policy and program as it relates to the development of house lots, no investment in infrastructure, in housing schemes, and therefore you saw the deterioration of roads, etc. within schemes. In the water sector, we inherited a company that was bankrupt, that owed hundreds of millions of dollars to its suppliers. We saw a neglect of all of our treatment plants. The distribution network was not upgraded or being maintained. And of course, you have to do that in order to deliver safe water to people, and that is an ongoing process. So there's no project in the water sector that you just complete and then you leave it on its own. You know, there's an ongoing maintenance that has to take place in order to keep delivering safe and consistent water to whether to the hinterland or on the coastline. So we had to pick up the pieces, and we had to hit the ground running, you know, as we say, because the previous administration, they distributed about 7,000 house lots in 5 years, and every day the ministry receives new applications. So we found a backlog, therefore, of about 70,000 people waiting for allocations. We're not daunted by that task. We promised 50,000 house lots, and we are well on our way to deliver on our manifesto commitment. In our first year, we were able to meet our target of 10,000 house lots, and in this year, 2022, we have already started to allocate lots, and we have the Building Expo, which is coming up, which will see the distribution of thousands of house lots and the distribution of thousands of land titles and so on. So we are also making a significant investment in infrastructure within our housing schemes, because you can see every day the cry around the country for upgrading of roads, and you see in some areas the poor state of roads. And this is what happens, as I was saying, you know, when years pass without investing in upgrading and in infrastructure in communities. So that is also an ongoing process. You have to constantly upgrade roads, and you have to maintain them, and you have to monitor them. So and with the huge investment in construction and in infrastructure, sometimes you lose some of that infrastructure, and you have to go back to prepare, you know, and to maintain. As you build new roads, sometimes the other roads deteriorate, and you have to constantly go back and do the maintenance. But this is all in the effort to ensure that our housing schemes are fully developed, that we have 100% occupancy, and that people can enjoy a good lifestyle within their neighborhoods, because that's what we're looking to build. Sustainable communities, we're looking to build neighborhoods, and that was severely lacking. When we took office, you saw a lot of schemes that were underdeveloped. People were not taking up their house lots, and that was simply because the infrastructure was not there in order to allow them to do that. And so immediately we had to invest in that infrastructure. So, for example, 2,000 people received their allocations in 2020 before we went into office. That's during the 5-month period and so on. So those people paid for their house lots but were waiting for the area to be developed. So there was no investment in the infrastructure there. So we honored all of those house lots, and we did the infrastructure work for those people to be able to access those house lots. And of course, we started our distribution as well to reach our target. It's been a challenging 2 years because we still have the pandemic. When we took office, it was at the height of the pandemic, but we still had to deliver in both sectors, in the housing and water sector, because people were crying out every day about the poor quality of water that they're receiving. Sometimes it's random, it's inconsistent. Sometimes they turn on the taps, they have water, sometimes they don't, and that can be very frustrating. And so a whole revamp had to be done in the water sector. And in the housing sector, we had to rejuvenate it. We had to revitalize the sector. We had to make significant investment. And of course, we had to put together the strategic plan on how we will achieve 50,000 lots in 5 years. So we have that blueprint, and we have started to deliver on our commitments.
But before we get into that blueprint, you mentioned the backlog of house lot applications. How are we with addressing that backlog?
So every day, like I said, people come to the ministry and make a new application. We have seen about 20,000 new applications from 2020 to now.
Wow.
And about 75% of that is from young people. So it's encouraging to me. I don't look at it as a daunting task. Like I said, I'm not intimidated by the huge demand, because I see it as people having confidence in the government.
Indeed.
I see every time somebody comes to the ministry, I get a sense that they feel like they can have their matter addressed, that they feel like they have a government they can rely on, a government that they trust to deliver for them. And that's why people are excited about putting in that application. You don't hear people say, before I used to hear this, in the past I used to hear people say, I submitted an application, years ago. I don't know whether I will get through or not. And we hear that on the street, But now you hear a different thing. You hear people say, especially the young people who had just turned 21, I hear them say to me, I put in my application, and I'm prepared to wait for when my time comes around, because we understand the ministry has a backlog. And it shows that people are listening, and they understand what is taking place.
I think they're more informed about
they're more informed, and they're prepared to wait on their turn. But more importantly, they know and they understand that we are working and that we will get to them.
Let's turn to two of the most impactful projects the ministry has spearheaded. I know there are many, but let's speak about two of the most impactful projects according to you.
It's hard to say, because it's a subjective question. So impactful to whom, Like I could say one of the one unforgettable experience that I had was going to originate in 𝐘𝐄𝐀 and taking drilling a well there and providing water to 200 plus people in that community who had a broken water system dating back to 2017, and nobody came to address their matter. They had a well there, but it collapsed, and nobody came to address it, and they walked for miles to get water until we went in there and we drilled a well for them. And seeing the smiles on the faces of the kids and the mothers who no longer have to do that journey, because we made direct connections to the homes, and for those far off communities we put standpipes for them to be able to access the water closer. And that's 200 people. But if you measure, for example, the tens of thousands of people on the East Bank who are now benefiting from our highway, our 4-lane highway from Mandela to Eccles, that's a different impact.
Yes.
So that's the impact on numbers. So I think that is a tremendous project, and for many reasons. Not just that we constructed the first 4-lane concrete highway in the country, but that we have significantly improved the quality of life of the people on the East Bank corridor. And then now we're doing the 𝐻𝐅𝐅𝐈𝐂𝐄 Road, so that even faster people can get to Georgetown, or from Georgetown to Eccles and beyond. And now we've signed the second phase of that project, from Eccles to Diamond.
Correct.
Which will significantly improve, again, tens of thousands of people who traverse that corridor every day. And also, it was one of these projects that His Excellency had designed since 2012 and never got a chance to implement. So when we opened that highway, I can tell how relieved and happy he was that finally this plan that he had for all these years was finally implemented. And that brings a whole other level of satisfaction, that when you have a dream about something and you have a plan, and then finally you get to see it implemented. And I'm sure he was proud to commission that road and be a part of that ceremony and a part of that project. So it's a subjective. I could go on to list a lot of projects that were there, and we were just hoping to get the opportunity to implement, and because we know specifically the benefit that it will bring to people.
I know that highway is really helping me personally, because I no longer need to get up extremely early to come to work, so I get a little bit extra sleep in the morning. The provision of sustainable housing solutions, of course, is a bedrock of the work being undertaken at the Ministry of Housing and Water. Can you tell us about the various housing options the ministry is implementing?
So we have a housing model or a solution for every income bracket. We have the low income model, we have a moderate income model, we have the young professional model, which has two types. It has one that is more suitable for the middle income, and then you have one that is suitable for the high income. And that's basically the 4 levels or 4 categories of income that we have at the ministry, even for house lot allocation, because we classify the category based on your income. It's not a subjective thing, it's very objective. We have a scale of income that we use, and it depends on the supporting evidence that you present to the ministry, your pay slip or something to show what you're earning. That is how you are classified. Your income is classified. So when the time comes around for allocation, and that's how you receive your allocation, based on the evidence that you provided to support your income, whether it classifies as low, moderate, middle, or high. But in our effort to deliver housing and home ownership to people, because you would know that this is something that I talk about a lot, home ownership.
Yeah.
Because we want to get people to home ownership. We promised 50,000 house lots, but there's a bigger aim, and there's a more impactful project that we want to undertake. That is home ownership. We want Guyanese to not be renters. We want Guyanese to own their own plot of land, to own their own home, to build a family for their children, to live to build a family for to have an inheritance for your children, and to live in a neighborhood, to be part of safe communities, sustainable communities that has access to jobs, that has access to recreational facilities, schools, hospitals, commercial activities. We always zone our areas to have an area for commercial activity, industrial activity, so people who want to build supermarkets, pharmacies, etc., that can take place within the community, so the people who live in the community don't have to look far or have to go great distances to be able to access services. They can have it right in their communities, and they can even find employment at these commercial businesses within communities. And we love it when banking institutions and so on come into these communities. Look at the Diamond community on the East Bank, for example. There's a mall that was built there, food courts, several banking institutions are there. So now that community sustains itself. And that's what we want for all of our communities, and getting people into homes. That's why we have this aggressive housing construction drive, because we want to help people to acquire a home as quickly as possible. And also, especially in this time where the world is facing this crisis with food prices and the escalation in cost of living, we are trying on our side, on government side, to try to control prices as much as possible. That's why we remove the VAT from cement. We remove VAT from building materials. We increase the mortgage interest relief ceiling to give people further ease with their taxes when they are a first time purchaser of a home. And we try to control the prices by utilizing scale. So when we award contracts for the construction of homes, if you give a contractor 10 houses to build, you can bring down the cost, because it's one mobilization. The cost comes down. If a beneficiary from our system has to go build that house on his or her own, it will cost them more. So we try to encourage people to take a house, because we can be able to deliver that house to them at a cheaper cost. And we also do the monitoring. So we ensure that they get quality for their money. So it's not a contractor who will try to rip you off or
just go while unchecked.
Right. Or the budget is finished and the house is 75% complete. We ensure that we deliver on those housing models, and people can get into a home faster.
You spoke early on about providing the necessary infrastructure in these communities so that they can be sustainable. What's the progress been with that in areas that did not have, the basic thing, road, water, and so on?
So that is a ongoing process. So what we do when we do land clearing for a new area, like for example the Commons Lodge scheme, there were people that were allocated in Commons Lodge during the APNU AFC period. Same thing with Prospect, for example. Those are just two communities, one on the East Coast, one on the East Bank. The people in Prospect had moved in, and there was no water. So I visited the community, and I was shocked. I didn't realize that people were actually living there. They moved in because they took advantage of a similar housing program that they attempted to do, and they moved into the houses but had no water connection.
Wow.
And they were using a standpipe, and that was right on the East Bank. We didn't even have to go far to look for that. And so quickly, within a matter of 2 weeks, we were able to deliver water to them. The connections had to be made, and GWI had to extend the network for them to be able to access water. So that is an ongoing process. In the new housing schemes, we have to first go in. We do the land clearing. We cut the roads and the bridges, and we give people an opportunity to start building. That is why we show people their lots so early, before the roads are upgraded to asphalt or concrete. Because when the trucks have to come in to do your construction, the road deteriorates. Yeah. So we can't upgrade the scheme to a certain level until people have moved in and started their construction and start to occupy. But we're trying to get ahead of that, because remember, we had people waiting for infrastructure once we took office. So we are behind on that. So we have to do the catching up now to be able to get ahead of that infrastructure work. So but we have our construction contracts, which we have tied into. We've tied the water distribution network into the construction contract. So the pipes and everything are laid when the roads are being constructed. And so the moment people move in, GWI comes in, make the connection, and you have your water, you have your electricity. CHPA also does the procurement for electrical distribution, the materials to do the infrastructure for the electrical works. So we've taken on a lot, and we're even working with private companies. We're even working with the telecommunication companies to bring internet faster, to the communities, because a lot of times too people don't move in because they simply don't have an internet connection, and you know how important that is now.
Yes, definitely.
So
in this ICT age
we have the telecommunications companies that are coming to us and saying, let's tell us your plans so that we can plan ahead, so we can run our cables and we can get internet to these communities faster. So we're working on that front too. So that is the whole idea around putting in infrastructure in these communities.
I know some persons in the new Cummings Lodge area where the turnkey houses would have been built, and they already have internet in that area. So I'm amazed at how fast the development is happening in these communities, and I'm sure persons can really appreciate that. You don't do the road contract and then have to wait until that's complete, and then you start the water distribution lines.
These things do not happen by accident. It's constant planning and execution that has to take place.
Let's turn to the hinterland. We often see a lot what's happening on the coast, but I don't think some persons really appreciate the work that is happening in the hinterland for housing development. Let's talk a bit about that.
So we just came out of the National Social Council conference, and the announcement was made that we will invest another $3 billion in hinterland communities. That was the announcement made by the president. And we had these breakout sessions at the conference with the Tushaus there. So there is a Tushau for every community, and they were all represented at the conference. And they all made representation. So I can speak for the water and housing sector. They all made representation for housing development in their communities. Now, the difference between the housing drive or housing development on the coastline and in the hinterland is that people on the coast pay for their houses. You know, you have to be able to qualify for a mortgage or have your cash payment to be able to buy a home. In the hinterland, it's different. In the hinterland, we provide the materials and we provide assistance with the construction of the home. So we provide the oversight and the monitoring and even help with the labor costs. So in other words, it's free in the hinterland.
Yeah.
It's the same with water delivery.
This is mostly Amerindian communities.
Yes, and riverine, hinterland and riverine communities.
Okay.
So the supply of water in the hinterland and riverine communities is also free. So that takes, you can imagine then the strain on the budget to be able to deliver this service, both water and housing, free to the hinterland communities. Nevertheless, our target in the hinterland is 100% access to water by 2025. And in terms of housing, we have put aside some money, and we're looking to maybe build about 300 homes in the hinterland. So that breakout session we had at NTC will inform us better which communities needed the most, who are in dire need, and we can perhaps start with targeting those communities first. We had a vibrant housing drive in the hinterland before, where we constructed several models in the hinterland, but that program eventually, went into hibernation during the former administration. So we have to revamp it now, and we needed that empirical data to be able to guide our decisions as to where we take this housing program in the hinterland first. But we have to start somewhere.
And you spoke about water a lot. What are some of the mega projects being pursued in the water sector?
So we have water delivery, of course, in the hinterland, which I said the target is 100% first-time access. So the hinterland target is access to water, 100% by 2025. On the coastland, the target is a little bit different. On the coastland, the target is 90% treated water by 2025. Now that is a mega project. So what we have designed a 5-year strategic plan for GWI 2021 to 2025, in which we've created that map. We've created that blueprint on how we're going to get to 90% treated water. As it is, when we came into government in 2020, it was 53% access to treated water. We have already increased that amount of treated water delivery, but we have to get to 90% by 2025. So we have several objectives on how we're going to get to that stage. We have the construction of 12 large water treatment plants, and we have identified those areas already. For 7 of those plants, we have already advertised. I think the tender was advertised in May of this year, and it would have closed, I think, at the end of June. So they're going through the evaluation process and so on now. So 12 water treatment plants. 5 are funded by the Caribbean Development Bank, and 7 funded by the government of Guyana. And this is a massive investment, Shaquille. So the construction of those 12 plants. And then we have another one that will be funded, an 8th plant funded by the government of Guyana. But we're waiting for the conclusion of the Hope Canal feasibility study, where we're conduct. This won't be a well. Mostly we drill wells, but this will be using the raw surface water from the Hope Canal to treat that, to deliver to the people on the Upper East Coast from Cove and John to Mahaika. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people will benefit from that. So by the end of 2025, when we would have constructed all of these plants, and in addition to the 12 large plants, or the 13 by then, we have 10 smaller plants that we have to construct. We have to do upgrading of the existing water treatment plants. We have to do extension of the distribution network that we already have around these water treatment plants, the existing ones. We have 28 existing water treatment plants. We have to do an extension of those networks too, so that more people can benefit from increased treated water. We also have to install meters to monitor consumption and so on. So all that is part of this bigger project. By the time we get to 2025, if we get all of our budgets approved, we're looking at an investment in the water sector to the tune of $28.5 billion in the water sector.
Wow.
That is a lot of money. It's a lot of investment, but guess what? We have to ensure that if we are to truly transform this country, and we're going to talk about major projects like high-span bridges and highways and all of these things, people need access to basic utilities.
Indeed.
We cannot have oil and gas money and save it or worry about the naysayers while our people need access to basic utilities, while they need access to good roads and water and reliable electricity and cheaper electricity, which we promised to decrease by 50% by 2025. We have to do these things for our people, and that is what the money is there for, to improve people's lives,
yes,
while safe for the future. And I think we have done an excellent job at explaining to the people, explaining to the country what our approach is in this first term in government and how we plan to utilize oil resources. It all goes into the budget, and it is all spent from that budget. It goes into the consolidated fund. We go to Parliament. We debate this for 2 weeks. People can ask questions, and it's open to public scrutiny. But at the end of the day, all of these resources are used to improve the standard of living and the quality of life of every single Guyanese.
Minister, I really enjoyed this discussion, but I usually end it on reflecting on government's vision for the respective sector. The Housing and Water Ministry, while of course some other ministries might be in the limelight because you see a lot of these big bridges and big roads and so on being built, this is an important sector. Water is essential for life, and you need a roof over your head. What's the administration's vision for the enhancement of this sector? How would you describe it?
Well, this is truly transformational for a lot of reasons. And I never lose an opportunity to say that our housing sector is the envy of the Caribbean.
Definitely.
At least the Caribbean, and perhaps the wider world. But I often get that question from the diplomatic community. How are you guys? How do you deliver this? How do you do this? Because it's unheard of, transferring freehold land to people, ordinary Guyanese, every single person who is entitled to receive a portion of land, transferring that freehold title is unheard of on this scale that we are promising to deliver this on. But I think Guyanese have a lot to look forward to, because we have the experience in the housing sector. The housing sector has always been a hallmark of any PPPC administration, dating back to 1992 under Dr. 𝐘𝐄𝐑, when he started this housing drive. And it is a right that is enshrined in our constitution, the right to affordable housing. And not just providing housing, the housing ministry does so much more. It helps to build a construction sector. It creates thousands of employment for people. So many other of our commitments are tied into the housing sector and the housing construction drive. And similarly with water, access to reliable water, knowing that having that security of knowing that every time you turn on your tap, you're going to get water. Not on a rotational basis, but a 24-hour basis. Knowing that the water is safe for you to drink. That is what we want. That is our vision for the housing and water sector. All of these other massive infrastructure projects are going on, but we have to ensure that at least for ordinary Guyanese, that we can build them up, that we can make them landowners, that we can make them homeowners, that they will have access to quality education within their communities, and with all of the investment in the other sectors, education, health, and everything else. It all ties into improving the welfare and the well-being of every single Guyanese, regardless of where you live. And that is why, too, we have to focus heavily on the hinterland. Because if you're building a one Guyana goes beyond a Guyana that is unified only on the color of your skin or your ethnicity. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond religious barriers. It goes beyond your geographical barrier. That's why we talk about bridging the gap between the hinterland and the coastland too. So, and what I appreciate a lot in the housing and water sector is that our work can be measured. You can know exactly how many house lots, how many applications were there, how many house lots we delivered, and whether we delivered on our mandate. In the water sector, you can see, you will know we had 53% access to treated water. At the end of 2025, 90% of our population will have access to treated water. In the hinterland, 43% of the people had access to water in 2020. Today, as I'm sitting here and speaking to you, 63% already have access to water. We've already increased that by 20%. By the end of 2022, when we would have fulfilled our target and delivered on our projects for 2022, it will increase to 73%. And we have a plan on how we're going to get it, how much it's going to increase by next year and the following year and 2025. And that is how I want to operate in the sector. All of these targets must be measured. And so we can look back and we can see the progress, and we can keep growing and expanding. And we made the point too at the NTC, at the conference with the Tushaus. In years prior, Tushaus had asked for access to water. Now they're asking for extensions, which means that a lot of their communities, most of their communities have access to water. But now the population is growing, and so more people need water. So now the main cry is expansion. It's not, we need a new well now.
Access,
right, we need expansion, So, and that is how you measure progress. So you know that we're doing something right. And you know, it's very encouraging to celebrate these milestones and to be able to measure your progress as you deliver in both sectors.
Minister, thank you so much. This has been a fruitful discussion. I'm sure I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the persons watching on TV and online, they have learned a lot as well. Congratulations on the work done so far.
Thank you very much.
This has been the journey to prosperity for all, a program in which we highlight the work government has been pursuing over the past 2 years, and we have been having a wonderful conversation with Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, the Honorable Susan Rodrigues. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
it.
do join us for another segment of the program.